What's up, guys? Welcome back to another review. And this time we're going to be taking a look at the Santa Claus 3, The Escape Clause, starring Tim Allen and introducing Martin Short as Jack Frost to the franchise. Overall, the Santa Claus 3, The Escape Clause, it's a good movie, but it's wasted potential. The whole concept of Scott Calvin having an out of being Santa Claus is a very intriguing concept, but this movie does not actually go through with it until like the last 10 minutes, and it lasts for all in all 5 minutes. And that's a real shame, because this movie, the first 2/3 of this movie is just slapstick comedy after slapstick comedy, just one thing after another happening, and it's creating the illusion that it's building up frustration for Scott Calvin as Santa Claus. The in-laws are in town. He has to keep the whole thing of being Santa Claus a secret. He has to pretend that the North Pole is Canada. So it's like this movie's the movie's trying to be like Three's Company, slapstick comedy. One of these things is not like the other type deal. You got Martin Short as Jack Frost running around looking like a Batman -- villain, trying to get Scott Calvin to give up being Santa Claus, and it takes so long for the actual interesting part of the movie to happen that it should have happened earlier, in my opinion. Like the first 20 minutes of this movie, we should have established the fact that the in-laws all the problems, and by the half-hour mark, Scott Calvin and Jack Frost should have switched as Santa Claus, should have switched roles. Jack Frost should have became Santa Claus, while Scott Calvin ended up having his real life in an alternate reality. Instead, like I said, the movie waits like the last possible minute to do it, and it does nothing with it, to be honest with you. Okay, so alternate reality the movie has, Scott Calvin is back to being Scott Calvin again. Neil and Laura are divorced. Apparently, Scott has become very distant from his son Charlie, to the point where Charlie wants nothing to do with his family at all. And I'm like, you have something here, but you waited too long to put this in. This could have been the family drama to make this movie stand out. Instead, you did a family dramedy for the first 2/3 of the movie, and when you finally get to the part that's actually the most interesting, you gloss over it, and nothing really all that intriguing happens. Jack Frost becomes Santa Claus, and he turns the North Pole into an amusement park. Ooh. See, how I would have done it is, once the switch happens, and Jack Frost becomes Santa Claus, and Scott Calvin goes back to being normal again, I would have did it in a way where Scott and Carol become like a Mr. and Mrs. Scrooge type deal, and I would have had Charlie and his sister be the ones to break Scott out of it and tell him that he's Santa Claus. Now, of course, by undoing that, in the subconscious for Charlie and his sister, they would have to subconsciously they'd have to be rediscover their old selves after their alternate forms, and do that by having the snow globe from the first movie play an important role in unlocking that that memory that's been erased, and then you do the same thing for Scott and Carol, and they all four of them work together to try and get the North Pole back from Jack Frost. That's how I would have done it. Once we get to that halfway point of the movie, that's how the rest of the movie would have been, something like that. Spending more time in this alternate reality, getting to see how different things really are. Instead, in the alternate reality, which lasts 10 minutes, Carol is nowhere to be found. Scott's estranged from his family, and within 5 minutes, he's back in the North Pole. He's back to being Santa, and the North Pole's back again. It's like a blink and you miss it type scenario, which is a damn shame, because I think you could have gotten so much more comedy and drama mileage if you would have done it in a better way. But all in all, this movie decided to focus more on slapstick family comedy for the first 2/3 of this movie. And it's not that the stuff is not funny. It really is. It is funny. Martin Short is hilarious as Jack Frost. I like Alan Arkin's dry-witted delivery, and Margaret is really funny. Judge Reinhold, seeing his reaction to the North Pole is priceless, because his facial expressions and his reactions are so over the top that you just can't help but laugh at it. That's how funny he is. No, Tim Allen, as usual, aces it out of the park. Martin Short, like I said, Martin Short is a great addition. He and Tim Allen have excellent chemistry in this movie because they play well off one another. Just watch them in Jungle to Jungle. They're hilarious together in that movie as well. So it's not like this movie is all bad. You do got some good. Bernard the Elf is nowhere to be found in this movie. Apparently, this elf from the second movie, whose name is Curtis, becomes the new number one. And I like his whole subplot of him being completely inept at what he's doing. He's constantly calling Scott for help and stuff like that. That stuff's okay as well. So, yeah, at the end of the day, the Santa Claus 3, it's a harmless movie. Is it as good as the first two? Absolutely not. This movie is full of, like I said, this movie's biggest problem is that it's wasted potential. It could have been something more. Instead, it's just there. You can skip it and you won't miss a beat. So, yeah, those are my thoughts on the Santa Claus 3, the Escape Clause. Like I said, don't really have a whole lot to say. It's a harmless movie to watch around the holidays. And if you like the first two and you want to complete the trilogy, it's a good own. But all in all, I'm going to give it a 6.5 out of 10. It's not as bad as I remember it being. It's got some funny moments here and there, and it's a quick watch. So yeah, 6.5 out of 10 for the Santa Claus 3, the Escape Clause. Well, that wraps up my review for this. Let me know in the comment sections below if you like this movie. And also, out of all three Santa Claus movies, let me know which one's your favorite. Do you like the first one? Do you like the second one? Or do you like this one? I would like to know down below. Like the video and subscribe, and I'll check you back next time for more.